Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something quite personal, actually, an aspect of male physiology that, well, it turns out holds some really fascinating clues about overall health.
That's right. We're talking about nocturnal penile tumescence, or NPT.
Those nighttime erections. And maybe thinking of this as a sort of hidden language your body might be speaking, while you're asleep.
Exactly. We've got this 2025 scientific overview that really unpacks it. And it's quite remarkable, really, how many different body systems connect back to this one seemingly specific event.
It really is. So our goal today for you listening is to explore this research. We want to understand how NPT can offer insights into, well, things like your cardiovascular health, hormones, nervous system function, even sleep quality.
And we'll try to connect those dots without getting totally bogged down in, super complex medical terms.
Right. Ultimately, we're looking at how this natural involuntary process might act as a kind of indicator, maybe an overlooked one, of how your body's actually aging biologically. Okay, so let's unpack this. Where should we start? Maybe with a link that might surprise some people.
Yeah, let's start with erectile dysfunction, ED, and its connection to cardiovascular health. I think many people see ED mainly in a sexual health context, right?
Absolutely.
But there's growing research suggesting it can actually be an early warning sign for much broader health issues.
And this overview we're looking at, it highlights a really significant connection here. It says men with ED face something like a 40 to 60% higher risk of developing cardiovascular problems.
That's a huge number.
Yeah, and importantly, that's independent of other known risk factors like smoking or high cholesterol. It's a pretty stark warning sign, really, that goes beyond just the bedroom.
It really is. And to put some more specific numbers on that, there's a study, Thompson and colleagues, back in 2005, they found ED could actually predict future cardiovascular events. Their analysis showed men with ED had roughly a 45% higher chance, a hazard ratio of about 1.45 of having some kind of cardiovascular event during the study period compared to men without ED. It's, statistically very meaningful.
Wow. So what's the actual biological connection? How does erectile function link up with heart health?
Well, the key seems to be the health of the endothelium. That's the inner lining of your blood vessels.
It's like the smooth lining inside a pipe.
Exactly. And its ability to produce nitric oxide, or NO, is crucial because it helps blood vessels relax and widen. Good blood flow, basically.
And you need that for erections, obviously, but also just for general cardiovascular function.
Precisely. So the theory is if nocturnal erections become less frequent or maybe less firm, it could reflect very early changes happening in those blood vessels, maybe even before you notice any other signs of heart trouble.
That's a powerful idea, a potential early warning system kind of built in. The overview even has this quote, doesn't it? Something like,
yeah. Erectile function may act as a sentinel event for systemic vascular decline.
sentinel event. That really captures it. Suggests it's like a guard watching out for bigger problems down the line.
Right. It emphasizes NPT as this potential indicator.
Okay, so it's clearly linked to blood flow and vascular health. But he
Right.
says it's not just about blood flow, right? What else influences NPT?
No, definitely not just blood flow. Hormones and the nervous system play absolutely vital roles too.
Okay.
So for instance, the overview points out that free testosterone, that's the testosterone your body can actually readily use, seems to have a stronger link to NPT frequency than just your total testosterone level.
Ah, okay. Why is that distinction important? Free versus total?
Well, there's this protein, sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG. Its levels tend to go up as men age, and it binds to testosterone. When testosterone is bound to SHBG, it's not really available for your tissues to use.
I see. So just measuring the total amount might not give the full picture of what's actually active in the body?
Exactly. So checking free testosterone might be more relevant when thinking about NPT.
Okay, hormones checked. Now, what about the neurological side? The nerves?
Right. So NPT mostly happens during REM sleep, the rapid eye movement stage when you typically dream.
Okay.
And for that to happen, you need healthy parasympathetic nerves. That's the rest and digest part of your nervous system. And you also need intact spinal reflexes in your lower back.
So does that mean things affecting sleep could impact NPT?
Absolutely. Anything that messes with your REM sleep, whether it's just getting older or conditions like sleep apnea, maybe even just poor sleep habits or stress, could potentially lead to fewer or weaker nocturnal erections.
And that could happen even if your cardiovascular system and hormones are otherwise okay.
Yes, that's the point. It could be an independent factor. It really shows how NPT isn't just about one thing.
It really does. It's like this intersection point for multiple systems, cardiovascular, hormonal, neurological, sleep. They all have to be working together.
Precisely. Which brings us nicely to this idea of biological age versus chronological age.
Right. We all know our chronological age, how many birthdays we've had, but biological age is different, isn't it? More about how our body is actually functioning, how quickly it's declining.
Exactly that. It's about functional health rather than just time passed.
So how does NPT potentially give us a window into that biological age?
Well, scientists are working on all sorts of complex ways to measure biological age, looking at DNA, methylation, proteins, things like that. Aging clocks, they call them.
Right, I've heard of those.
But NPT is interesting because it's something potentially, observable, maybe even trackable in a simpler way. As this overview highlights, it kind of integrates signals from several key areas related to vitality.
Like what areas specifically?
Okay, so your vascular health things, like how stiff your arteries are, how well they dilate,
Right.
your hormonal profile, not just testosterone, but maybe cortisol, melatonin balance too, your neurological function, that autonomic nerve balance, those spinal reflexes, and as we just discussed, your sleep architecture, particularly how much quality REM sleep you're getting.
So because it touches on all these vital systems, the quality and frequency of NPT could almost be like a proxy measure, an indicator of our body's overall biological resilience.
That's the idea, yeah, like a built-in barometer, as you said earlier, a reflection of systemic health.
Which naturally leads to the question, what is considered normal for NPT? And how does it typically change with chronological age?
Yeah, that's what everyone wants to know, right? That the overview gives some, let's say, typical ranges, but with a big caveat about individual variation.
Okay, what are the ballpark figures?
So for guys under 30, the average might be around, say, 3 to 5 episodes per night.
Okay.
By the time you hit 50 or so, that might typically drop a bit, maybe 2 to 3 times a night on average.
And older, after 60.
Yeah, after 60, it's common to have fewer episodes, and they might also be less rigid. But again, this is really important, there's a huge amount of variation from person to person. These are just general averages.
Understood. So what's a potential takeaway then for someone listening? How should they interpret this information for themselves?
Well, the thinking, based on this research, is that if an older man, say, consistently has really well-preserved NPT frequent, firm episodes, it might suggest his biological aging process is perhaps a bit slower than his peers.
Kind of like a sign of good underlying health.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And conversely, if someone notices a really significant and crucially premature decline in their NPT, well, that could be a signal. Maybe something to pay closer attention to regarding overall health, and perhaps worth bringing up with a doctor.
This feels like it taps into that whole quantified self movement, doesn't it? People tracking steps, heart rate, sleep.
It definitely connects. Lots of people are tracking heart rate variability, HRV, or their sleep stages with wearables like Oura rings, WAP bands, Fitbit.
Yeah, all that data.
Some even track hormones through regular blood tests.
But as far as I know, those common wearables, they don't actually monitor nocturnal erections directly, do they?
No, not the current consumer ones. The gold standard for accurately monitoring NPT is still a medical test called penile plethysmography. It usually involves strain gauges and is often done overnight in a sleep lab.
Right. Not exactly convenient for home use.
Not at all. However, the overview does mention some interesting experimental technologies that are being developed. Things like pressure-sensitive rings, thermal imaging techniques, even infrared sensors, all aiming to monitor NPT non-invasively.
That sounds pretty futuristic. But I guess the key point for now is that these are still very much in the research phase.
Absolutely. They're not validated or widely available for you to just buy and use at home yet, but the technology is moving in that direction, which is interesting.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier this isn't necessarily a one-way street, this connection between ED or NPT and cardiovascular health.
Right. The overview suggests it could be bidirectional.
What does that mean exactly, bidirectional?
It means the influence can go both ways. So, yes, declining cardiovascular health, poor blood flow, can definitely impair erectile function. That seems clear.
Okay.
But also, chronic sexual dysfunction itself, the ongoing presence of ED, maybe the stress and anxiety associated with it, could potentially contribute to negative psychological and physiological outcomes. It might actually impact overall health in the other direction.
Ah, I see. So the stress, maybe the hit to self-esteem or relationship strain from persistent ED could have knock-on effects on, say, cardiovascular health or hormone balance.
That's the potential feedback loop, yes.
Yeah.
So ED isn't just a potential predictor of future problems. In some circumstances, it might also become a contributing factor to further health decline. It's a more complex picture.
That's a really important nuance. Okay,
Yeah.
so given all this potential value, why is an NPT something doctors routinely check for when assessing aging or heart disease risk? It seems like it could be useful.
It does seem like a missed opportunity, doesn't it? There are a few hurdles, though.
Such as?
Well, for one, as we mentioned, we still lack really robust, standardized, normal ranges for NPT across all the different age groups and populations. It makes interpretation tricky.
Okay, lack of clear benchmarks.
Right. And then there's the practical side. Those current gold standard monitoring methods, like in a sleep lab, are inconvenient, can be costly, and aren't easily scalable for routine screening.
Makes sense.
And, sometimes it's just hard to quickly distinguish between psychological causes of ED and underlying physical ones without a more thorough workup. NPT monitoring can help with that, but it adds complexity.
But despite those challenges, the overview does look ahead a bit, doesn't it? At potential future uses.
It does, yes. One simple idea is maybe standardizing just asking about morning erections as a basic screening question during checkups. Are you typically waking with an erection? It's simple, non-invasive.
A starting point, at least.
Exactly. Another potential area is integrating NPT tracking into remote health monitoring, especially if those newer non-invasive technologies we talked about become reliable and accessible.
Like data feeding into your health app alongside sleep and heart rate.
Precisely. And maybe the ultimate goal down the line could be to combine NPT data with other metrics, HRV, sleep data, hormone levels, to build a more holistic, comprehensive index of male aging and health status.
That sounds like a much more personalized and proactive approach. Now, just to kind of synthesize everything, the overview had that table summarizing how different systems contribute. Can we just quickly recap those connections?
Yeah, absolutely. So, cardiovascular system. Main things are healthy endothelium, good nitric oxide signaling, flexible arteries. We might look at indicators like flow-mediated dilation or NO byproducts.
Got it. Hormones.
Hormonal system.
Yeah.
Key is that bioavailable free testosterone, keeping an eye on SHBG, maybe other hormones like LH, DHEA.
Neurological.
Neurological.
Yeah.
It's about that healthy autonomic balance, those
Yeah.
intact spinal reflexes. Indicators could be things like HRV analysis, maybe specific EEG patterns during REM sleep, nerve conduction tests.
And finally, sleep.
And sleep circadian system. Crucial role through REM sleep duration and intensity and proper melatonin regulation. You'd assess that with detailed sleep studies, polysomnography, and maybe melatonin level tests.
Wow. It really hammers home just how deeply interconnected everything is and how NPT sits right at the crossroads of all these vital functions.
Exactly. It's a real integrator.
So let's try and sum this up. The big takeaway here seems to be that nocturnal erections are, well, way more than just a simple localized event. They're actually a complex sign reflecting how well multiple critical body systems are working together.
Right. Systems that are all sensitive to aging and overall health. And because of that, NPT has this really interesting potential as a kind of built-in marker, maybe low cost, definitely biologically relevant for a man's general health and how he's aging biologically.
And while we might not have easy ways to track it precisely at home just yet,
Not yet, not reliably for consumers.
the underlying science really makes a strong case for just paying attention to this natural bodily function. It could offer valuable clues about your overall well-being. It's another piece of that health puzzle.
Definitely another piece.
So, a question for you listening. What really stands out to you about this link between something so, well, private, like nocturnal erections, and your broader health picture? It's certainly shifted my perspective a bit.
Yeah, me too. And it leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? How many other seemingly hidden aspects of our own biology might hold crucial cues to understanding our health trajectory? And maybe more practically, what proactive conversations or steps, obviously with healthcare professionals, might this kind of knowledge prompt us to consider?